Welcome, everyone. So today, we're diving into one of the greatest stories ever told, the Mahabharata. But we're not just going to look at it like some ancient poem. We're going to crack it open and see it for what it really is, a powerful, timeless playbook for leadership, for ethics, and for navigating the messy, complicated world of our modern workplaces. Let's get into it.
I know, it sounds kind of out there, right? But what if I told you that the conflicts, the ambition, the tough moral calls that kings and warriors faced on the battlefield Kurukshetra are the very same challenges you faced in the boardroom, in your emails, and yeah, even in your team's chat channels every single day? That's the big question we're going to explore.
First things first, we have to look inward. You see, the Mahabharata teaches us that before you can even think about leading other people, you have to understand your own internal struggles. The biggest, most important battles aren't fought with armies out there. They're fought right inside a leader's own mind, against their own biases, their own blind spots.
So let's look at our first character, King Dhritarashtra. Now, he was born physically blind, but that's really just a metaphor for his real blindness, which was all emotional. He was so deeply attached to his son, Duryodhana, who was a pretty terrible guy, by the way, that he just chose to ignore every single red flag, every unethical move, and every warning sign of the disaster that was coming.
And this is where we get our first huge lesson. Dhritarashtra's love for his son completely overrode his duty as a king. And that's the thing. When our personal feelings cloud our professional judgment, the entire organization, the entire team ends up suffering. You just can't have excellence without objectivity.
So what does this look like today? Well, it's the manager who promotes a buddy over the person who actually earned it. It's the executive who only surrounds themselves with people who tell them what they want to hear. Or it's turning a blind eye when your star employee is creating a toxic environment. That is Dhritarashtra's blindness. And believe me, it rots a company from the inside out.
The antidote to this kind of blindness is a really important concept called Dharma. The easiest way to think of it is as your righteous duty, your moral compass, your true north. It's the ethical foundation that should be guiding every single decision a leader has to make.
Now, the character Yudhishthira, he really tries to live by Dharma, but his story shows us that doing the right thing is, well, it's almost never simple. He's constantly stuck in these gray zones. What do you do when the right path isn't the one that makes money? His whole journey is a reminder that leadership is this constant tricky dance between pure ethics and what's practical.
And then, oh man, then there's Karna. He's maybe the most tragic character in the whole story. He was an unbelievable warrior, just brimming with talent and skill. But his fatal flaw? He was fiercely loyal to the absolute wrong cause, all because of his friendship with the villain, Duryodhana.
And the takeaway for us here is a tough one. You can be the most talented person in the entire company, but if you use that talent to prop up a toxic leader or a bad culture, you become part of the problem. You actually share the blame for the failures that follow. Your skill doesn't just get wasted, it becomes a liability.
And what's so wild is that you can see these archetypes in almost any office today. We all know a Bhishma, right? The person who's so loyal to the old way of doing things, they can't adapt. Or an Arjuna, who's brilliant but sometimes gets completely paralyzed by self-doubt. You've definitely met a Duryodhana, whose ambition has no off switch. And hopefully you have a Vidura, that quiet voice of reason that, unfortunately, often gets ignored by people in power.
Okay, so we've looked inside the leader's head. Now let's shift gears and talk about what they actually do. Once you've wrestled with your own character, how do you manage a team? How do you build a winning strategy and deal with conflict when it inevitably shows up?
The absolute masterclass in all of this comes from Lord Krishna, and here's the most fascinating thing about him. He never, not once, picks up a weapon during the entire war. He's not a general in the way we think of one. No, he's a coach, he's a strategist, he's a mentor. He is, without a doubt, the ultimate servant leader.
And his playbook is just revolutionary. Think about it. When Arjuna has a complete breakdown on the battlefield, Krishna doesn't just give him orders. No, he gives him perspective. He gives him the entire Bhagavad Gita. He empowers Arjuna to find his own courage. And that is a powerful model for every manager today. Your job isn't to have all the answers. It's to help your team find the answers for themselves.
And this coaching style gave them a massive strategic edge. You had the Pandavas, who were smaller, but they were agile. They built this diverse coalition. The Kauravas, on the other hand, were this huge, top-heavy, rigid organization, totally crippled by the egos and infighting of their generals. It just goes to show, it's not always the biggest army or the biggest company that wins. It's the one that works together the best.
But even the best teams can get wiped out if their strategy isn't complete. And that brings us to the tragic story of Abhimanyu, Arjuna's son. This kid was a prodigy, a brilliant warrior who knew how to break into the enemy's most complex, most deadly military formation, the Chakravyuha. But there was one fatal flaw in his training. Nobody ever taught him how to get out.
And this is just a perfect metaphor for a trap we fall into in business all the time. We get so excited about launching a new project, entering a new market, that's our brilliant entry plan, but we totally forget to plan for the whole journey. What's the plan for when things go wrong? What's the exit strategy? Abhimanyu's story is this powerful, painful reminder that a great idea needs a complete 360-degree plan.
All right, this brings us to our final and maybe our most important theme. What's the point of winning if the cost of that victory absolutely destroys you? What is the legacy you're actually leaving behind?
There is a moment in the epic, the point of no return. It's when Draupadi is publicly humiliated in the royal court. And the real tragedy wasn't just the horrible act itself. It was the deafening silence from all the great wise elders, Bhishma, Drona, Vidura, who just sat there, watched, and did absolutely nothing. It was a catastrophic failure of leadership. The lesson for us today could not be clearer. Psychological safety isn't just some nice-to-have HR buzzword. It is the absolute foundation of a healthy organization. When leaders stay silent when they see harassment or bias or unethical behavior, they are complicit. Period. And a system that fails to protect its own people is a system that is doomed to collapse.
After 18 days of just brutal, devastating war, the Pandavas win. They achieve their goal. But look at the cost. Millions are dead, the kingdom is in ruins, and they are left to rule over a nation of ghosts. And this forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question about our own ambitions. What does winning even mean if this is the prize?
This is what's known as a Pyrrhic victory, a victory that comes at such a devastating cost it's basically a defeat. In our careers, this looks like hitting quarterly targets by burning out your entire team. It's winning that big contract by cutting corners, which then destroys your company's reputation. Sustainable leadership means making sure the way you win doesn't make the victory totally meaningless. So we've talked about character, strategy, legacy. But when you boil it all down, the entire epic, every lesson we've touched on, it all hinges on the incredible power of a single choice. Right before the war starts, Krishna gives both sides a choice. He says, you can have me, all my wisdom, my guidance, but I won't actually fight. Or you can have my entire massive army. Arjuna, on behalf of the Pandavas, chose Krishna's wisdom. Duryodhana, for the Kauravas, greedily snatched up the army. It was a clear choice, strategic vision versus brute force, wisdom versus stuff. And that single choice, it decided everything.
And every single day, in every decision you make, big or small, you face a similar choice. Your career, your projects, your team, this is your personal Kurukshetra. This is your battlefield. So will you choose the easy power of just having more resources and authority, or will you choose the lasting strength of wisdom, of ethics, of mentorship? The choice is yours.